Thanks. Well, what I want to do is to start in an odd place with a schema which I want to claim perpetuates itself through a number of different aspects of what interests us. I want to start with Darwin, believe it or not. And what I understand as a tension in Darwin, which isn't talked about much because of the large amount of propaganda made about what Darwin really had to say. You all understand that everybody has his and her own Darwin, and you use Darwin to do whatever work you expect you want to do. And the Ernst Mayr Darwin is the Darwin who brought us the populational view, the non-typological populational view of organisms. That before Darwin, people thought of organisms as a type, and the problem of evolution was how did you go from one type to another, but Darwin broke that by emphasizing that you shouldn't have the typological view, but you should see organisms as varying. But it doesn't, not as simple as that. Because if you read The Origin, as you have, you will remember that the question arises in The Origin of the origin of variation. But to speak of the origin of variation implies that there exists a stage before the variation. I mean, otherwise, you want to distinguish between the origin of a particular new variant and this problem of the origin of variation. Darwin has a lot to say about the circumstances under which variation appears. There are environmental stresses and so on, which may lead to a lot of variation. So, for Darwin, the total Darwinian scheme is that you begin here, you then go to that, although, you know, at what, and then somehow that cluster of variants is transformed in the space, and finally, presumably you go to that. Although he doesn't, you know, there isn't, I say it's a tension in Darwin because there's a lot of talk about the transformation of variation. In fact, I would describe Darwin's theory generally as a theory that variation within a species in time and space is transformed into differences between species in time and space. So it's a transformation of variation. But nevertheless, there is in Darwin this implicit tension between describing species as variable, and that's the underlying necessary material for evolutionary change, and somehow a kind of typological view of the species before and after the process, without being explicit. And I want to present that because it is a model, not historically a model, but a kind of formal model, which appears at other stages in our discussion, in particular the actual history of neutral theory as it develops, and also the historiography of neutral theory. And I'm going to talk about this as the origin problem. And I'm going to claim that we're not really here just to talk about the origin of, this is the organism, this is the evolutionary level. We then have the historical level, and then we have the historiographic level, and I'm going to claim, for just formal reasons, I can map one onto the other. The origin problem for the neutral theory is what was the first introduction or stage at which neutral theory comes into play from previous theories. And second, we then have what we might call the development stage in evolution, where there's, and I don't mean organismic development, I mean the development of the system. And then finally we reach the new stage again. So we move from an old theory to a new one, or an old species to a new one, or something. And I want to differentiate between the origin of the neutral theory and its early development, because I think those are two different things. And they give us a slightly different view than I had originally, and I believe a slightly different view than Michael developed, and so on. So that's why I want to put it in this way. Now,